Welcome back to another episode of Just a Tip, the podcast where we say the shit that everyone is thinking but nobody's saying. We're not here to kiss ass, we're just here to tell the real stories from the people that helped build Miami. Today's guest is a name that you need to know, my man Alan Roth, a Miami local who started as a cashier at News Café, worked his way up to opening roomie, and is now one of the owners of the very popular Giselle and Rosa Sky. Alan has turned rooftops into full-blown experiences. He's built places where people come for the view and stay for the vibe. In this episode, we're breaking down his story, how he got here, how social media has changed his game, and what actually matters when you're building nightlife in a city that never stops reinventing itself. Let's get into it. This episode of Just a Tip is brought to you by Rooftop Solutions. So the craziest thing happened. You might have even seen it in the news. A restaurant in Wynwood had to shut down for years after a leaky roof caved in. Imagine all that money, time, momentum gone just because the roof wasn't handled right. And that's why I always recommend Rooftop Solutions. They've been protecting homes and businesses all over Miami-Dade and Broward for over 20 years. They're local, based in Hialeah, and they take pride doing the job with honesty and craftsmanship so your roof stands the test of time. And here's the deal. If you got a leak, they will patch it for free while prepping your roof to be replaced. So unless you want to add a lazy river in your dining room, call Rooftop Solutions, tell them Felix sent you. Welcome to another episode of Just a Tip. I'm here with Miami legend Alan Roth. Alan, what's up, buddy?
Hello. Thank you for having me.
It's such a pleasure, man.
Thank you. Thank you, team.
It's so refreshing to have somebody like you on. Last episode we had Chris and Ingrid, and we went over a lot of the nostalgia and talking about old school Miami Beach. And,
so they're before me.
I don't want to say before.
Just kidding. I'm just kidding. They can have it. They can have number one.
We'll see how they edit this and chop it up. But I'm a student of the game. I think I met you like 25 years ago, 26 years ago. I think first time I met you was Chaos. And
yes.
I think when you were doing Chaos, and then
Chaos
I think
would have been like 97, 98,
right, so,
99, 98, 99, I think.
Yeah, so we're going 26 years. 20,
That was still to this day. That was one of my favorite nightclubs that existed in Miami. Since for me, since going out, it had a certain energy.
It was awesome.
Really special. Yeah, it was one of these places where. At that time, you could do what I call like a smoke and mirror show, where they literally took red drapes and put red drapes along the entire wall and super cheap couches. But the energy in the room between the DJs that they had at the time, and I was just a young promoter, but the DJs that we had at the time, and I remember they had a live drummer, and he used to wear a patch. I don't remember his name, but this man was so amazing, and the place was fire. I mean, for me, I can still feel that room. It was great. So.
But you started out, I think, originally in Union Bar, right?
So my first sort of weekly party was Union Bar. I threw two parties, separate parties before that. One was on Ocean Drive, and it was called Percussion Discussion. I came up with this idea. It was a real sort of bohemian vibe, and but then I threw my second party at the Spot, Gary James's place, and Mickey Rourke, and a few other guys. And then though I turned to a friend of mine and I said, "What's next? What do you think I should do?" He's like, "Look at the promoters." And at that time, we didn't even call. There was no name.
Right.
Look what Michael Capone is doing. Look what Tommy Pooch is doing.
Right.
And there were a few other guys. And look at what they're doing. They have weekly events.
Right.
You should have a weekly event. So I did that. I went to the Union Bar guys, and I ended up doing Tuesday nights there for a while.
You did that with, I think, Lance, right? Was it Lance that was?
So Lance came on board. Lance and I grew up together.
Right.
He's a couple years older than I am, but he was my sister's age, and it ended up there was a new place that was going to open called the Tudor, and it was the Tudor Hotel, right on 11th and Collins, and the gentleman was rest in peace, he just died, JP.
Yeah.
And JP was friends with Andy, and Andy owned Union Bar. And Andy said to JP, I ran into them in the street, and he was preparing to open the Tudor, and he said, "Why don't you get Alan to work with you? He does Tuesday nights for us." So JP hired me, and I ended up doing Friday nights there or Saturday nights there, whatever it was, and I brought Lance in as my partner, because Lance at the time was one of the guys.
Right.
You know, he was a man about town. He was a party boy, loved women, was also successful.
Right.
He had Krieger watches.
Krieger watches. Lance.
Watches.
Oh, that's right. It's that
Lance Burstein, yeah.
That's right.
And that was
Now he owns property in Wynwood.
he does own property in Wynwood, yeah. But he's a good guy. He's sweet.
Great guy. I've met him a bunch of times.
And
He's a
I'm
sweetheart.
really happy for him. He got married and kids, and
Calmed down a little bit.
calmed down a lot.
Right. No, that's awesome. Also, like in terms of like tribesmen, you know, I'm a tribesman, you're a tribesman. In terms of promoters, that was like kind of like you guys were the first tribesmen. Like in terms
There
of,
was at that time. So when South Beach was, remember, the only place to go out really at that time was South Beach,
Right.
and there was like a spot in North Miami and a spot in Coconut Grove, but
Right.
but at the time, South Beach was the only place. And what made it so interesting and unique was, you know, you had a bunch of spots where people could sort of pop around and go from place to place. And there were probably like honestly like a handful of guys that were promoting.
Right.
Me being the youngest, I was actually I wasn't even I could just vote.
Right.
Nobody knew how old I was.
Right. Because we were all in college when we
I was
started doing
18.
it. Right.
You know,
Yeah,
I didn't go to
18 when I started.
college
Right.
right out of high school,
Right.
and that's when I started. But yeah, there was a handful of guys, and there were no women. Nowadays there are women,
Yes.
which is amazing.
Yes.
But there was Pooch and Michael Capone, and there was the group of these Haitian guys, Kiki and Unique, and they were all amazing. They had their own thing. Mark Leventhal
Yep.
and Bill Spector, who you just said,
Smack, right?
Smack was doing some stuff. Yeah. So it was a good moment. Yeah.
So obviously, you know, I know you've told the Will Chamberlain story. Was that at Liquid or was that at Fat Black Pussycat?
It was at the original Fat Black
Got it.
Pussycat. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, I've told that story a few times. I always love that story.
So
but
for those who haven't, you know, heard the
Haven't
story, like, do you have another story? Maybe, you know,
I've got a lot of stories.
Right.
A
one that you
good,
could share.
a good moment was, I mean, there's so many crazy stories,
Right.
and as we're talking, things probably will pop up in my brain.
Right.
But Mickey Rourke, when I was really young, I was never really connected to him. I wasn't close to him. I met him a couple times, but around 2003, I partnered with Tommy Pooch.
Yep, love Tommy.
And Tommy was close with Mickey, and I knew Mickey because he went to Beach High. I went to Beach High, of course, legendary actor and incredible, but also like this wild, crazy dude. And I have one night where he wouldn't let me go, and he and I went out and we had a couple of friends with us. He was staying at the Raleigh Hotel. Friends, I mean ladies. Okay, I am married now, but he was a party guy,
Right.
And like I just found myself like in this big suite with me, Mickey, and two other friends, and I was like looking around. I'm like, where am I and what am I doing? You know, it's like
How old were you at the time? You must.
So that was 2000. That was like 2003, 2004 maybe. So we're in 25. So it was 22 years ago, and I'm 50.
Yep.
So you know, I was 26, 27, 28. I was somewhere around that moment.
Right.
But you know, when you grew up in a place, look, how many actors have come out of Miami Beach? You know, there's a few. So when this guy who is like iconic, legendary Miami, is like, you know, sort of won't let you leave and wants you to like stay with him throughout the whole night, it's like, what am I doing and where am I?
Right.
You know, so.
What time was this at? Was this like, this must have been.
Oh,
like,
it lasted all night. No,
Right.
we started off like at dinner. Look, Tommy always could last longer than I
Right.
could, to be totally honest with you. But and I remember Tommy was like, "No, I'm gonna leave," and Mickey was like, "Alan, don't leave, please. Let's go out." And I was like, "Okay," and we kept going.
Was this before Michelle? Like, was this the Tommy before Michelle? Or was
Oh
this
no,
when you-
Michelle was there at
Right,
that time.
right.
Yeah, Michelle was there. Michelle and Tommy actually Chaos. I think they met at Chaos.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think they were introduced to Chaos,
Yep.
and that's where they fell in love, and then you know,
Right.
and then didn't fall in love anymore. But yeah,
But
so.
still made a great team. I mean, they're also
No, they
legends.
did.
I mean, they
I
threw
was
some
very.
great parties.
They were my partners.
Right.
I mean, essentially, at the time I partnered with Tommy, and Ingrid. You just said Ingrid.
Yep.
Ingrid was our third.
Interesting.
So that was around 2003, and we created Thai Entertainment, and which was super fun, and it stood for Tommy, Alan, Ingrid.
Never knew that. Okay.
Yeah. In fact, yes, the other day I could show you. I'll give it to you. But there was a picture of us on the cover of the Miami Herald, and they called us party people, which is like, kind of amazing because that's what we were.
Right.
And we did the Raleigh deal. We did the beach club in the back.
Yep.
And it was a fun moment. That was a fun moment. Andre Balazs bought the Raleigh, and we were going up against Michael Capone, Eric Milan, and they had like 10 other people, and they were taking the beach club at the Ritz.
Right. And for those people who don't know who Eric Milan is, you're talking Amnesia, you're talking Opium Gardens, you're talking definitely one of the, he did Mansion also, right? Like
he did Mansion. He had Opium, and they had a group. What's his name was part of the team, Roman Jones.
Right.
But Eric had Living Room even way before that,
Right.
which was by the Union Bar on that 6th Street.
Yep.
On Washington Avenue. But he was like, Eric to me was this guy that, not to say I looked up to, but he was the man. There was a moment when I looked at him. First of all, he's like one of the most handsome men that exist on this planet, really.
I mean,
he was a model.
He's in his 50s now.
Now he's older than that. He's
really?
Yeah,
but
yeah.
You know what? The guy looks
No, the
mint.
guy still to this day looks
mint. Yeah.
incredible.
Looks great. Yeah.
And he's still like one of the coolest guys ever. But I remember him, and he used to have his cigar, and him and his brothers owned the Living Room, and I was promoting at Union Bar, and I just remember being like, that guy's the man. He had always had like, a 6'2" gorgeous supermodel with him, and didn't pay attention to me much back at that moment, to be totally honest, and I was okay with it. But later on, we became friends, and
God bless him. He's still going at it, man.
Yeah.
He's still, he's still doing
he's a
his
good
thing.
one. He's a good one.
And then, you know what? Because I noticed in your social, you posted a picture with like Mini-Me one time, and
like the little guy.
Yeah. Because I remember he was doing the nightclub tour circuit for a while.
Yeah.
And we booked him in Boston for a party called It's a Small World. And it just so happened that like that week, every major event was in Boston. So we had him. Michael Jordan was there for the golf tournament, the Boston Film Festival. So the whole cast from American Beauty, like Stephen Baldwin, Alanis Morissette, it would just turned into... Like we just expected to book Mini-Me, and it turned into the cover of every newspaper the next day. Like, you have any like things like that happen?
Well, there's again, when we started this thing, there's a million stories. So you just said, what was his real name?
Vern Troyer.
Yeah. So I have a great story. So I ended up, I became friends with a guy by the name of Peter. He lives out in L.A. It'll come to me.
Okay.
His last name is blanking on me. But Peter and I became friends, and he lived in LA, and he managed a ton of bands and musicians and artists. And at the time, Limp Bizkit was one of the biggest bands. They were about to release their third album, which was their biggest album. The Chocolate Starfish.
Right.
Chocolate Starfish and something fruit, whatever. It was some crazy long name for an album. But I became friends with Fred. Because of Peter.
Yep.
And
I met him. He's a good guy. He's actually a good guy.
Fred?
I ran into him in Ukraine.
Fred's amazing.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Fred's
super guy. Not what you expect.
He was a little, look, he became like, a meme almost. Like, he became like this like rock star dude, very quickly.
Right.
And he ended up, Peter and Fred were in Miami for a press junket. And they were staying at the Delano. Peter calls me and he says, "Hey, Fred and I are in town. What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, well, I'm down the street." I'm like, "What's going on?" He's like, "Well, we're not even staying here for a night. We're doing a press junket for the new album. Come over and have dinner with us." I shoot over, of course, and I'm at the Delano in a big suite, and we have dinner. I don't know anything about the release party that's happening the next day. Nobody tells me anything.
This was him in his prime.
This was the day before. He was A-list. He was the king.
Yeah.
So, and we had already spent a bunch of time together. Like we'd had dinner at Rumi. I mean, we'd been together already a bunch of times, so we were friendly. We were texting each other. We became friends, and so we're on our way. We get in the limo, and it's just the three of us. And keep in mind, I'm wearing shorts, a t-shirt, sandals, my wallet. I don't even know. I didn't even have a cell phone at the time, actually. And they're like, "Come with us to the press junket." Okay, great. We go to the press junket, and we go back in the limo. And Fred turns to me. He's like, are you coming tomorrow? And I said, coming to what? And he goes, Peter, you didn't tell Alan? And he goes, it's the release of our new album, and it's at the Playboy Mansion.
Gotcha.
So I said, you're just telling me this right now? You couldn't have told me this a week ago?
Right.
I could have booked a flight. They're like, well, we can either drop you back off.
You wouldn't have worn shorts.
Well, I didn't even have anything with me. He goes, we can either drop you back off or come with us. And I was like, what? And I went with them.
Right.
And they had a private plane, and we jumped on the plane, and it was just the three of us, like I said, and we go to LA, and I fall asleep on the plane. I wake up, we're there, a limo picks us up at the airport. I go back to Peter's house, I fall asleep, I wake up, and there's a car outside with a note from Peter, go get yourself some clothes, just make sure you're home by 4 or 5 o'clock. And I did this. I had the car take me all over town. I felt like a Pretty Woman. Honestly, It was the greatest story. I go that night, and there must have been, 50 celebrities. It was at the Playboy Mansion. My first time, my only time there. And it was a magical night. And it was one of these moments. And that's where the photo's from.
Right.
I mean, I ended up hanging out with Courtney Love, literally.
I saw that picture, yeah.
For an hour at a high top, because she was there alone. But you're in this moment where it's like, maybe she knew a few people there, but she was kind of alone like me in a way. And we sat there for an hour talking, and she was amazing. I mean, she was so rock and roll and so cool. But that's where that photo comes from. And it was one of those moments where I was like, how did I even end up here in this thing? I mean, I'm like this guy from Miami Beach. I had no connection to the entertainment world, to that life. But it was also one of those times, like the Wilt Chamberlain story, where I'm like, what's happening? I'm just like at this outer body experience where I'm like, where am I? Why am I even here?
Right. How did I
end up here? And why am I even here, really?
And I think that pop culture.
What value did I have at that moment? Go ahead. Sorry.
And I also think that the pop culture was a little differently. I saw pictures of Scott Weiland and Courtney Love, and we were all such fans of that genre of music. There was just so many different genres of music, whether it was hip hop or rock or house, EDM, even international. It was just, there was so much of it, and it was so good. Do you find that between then and now is one of the reasons why the scene has changed?
I mean, look. Well, first of all, musically,
right,
it's all changed.
Right.
Electronic dance music now is, house music is where it's at.
Right.
I mean, even country is having this huge moment,
right.
And I think that in terms of musically, first of all, you're talking about people like Scott Weiland. I mean, he did 3 shows for me. Yeah, really? I got to know him a little bit. There was a woman that was managing him. I mean, rest in peace. That guy was a musical genius. He was not my friend,
right.
But I did share a little bit of time with him.
Right.
I had a bar in Midtown. Talk about moments again. Yeah. I had a bar in Midtown called Ricochet. It was right behind Sugar Cane.
Okay.
And what was really fun about Ricochet is that we would do these really amazing shows that were super intimate because you could only hold 150 people there. And Scott did one of them. And I remember before he went on, his then wife, who I do still speak to once in a while, she's like, "Can you get like a shot or something? Can you get some vodka?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, like a shot." She's like, "No, like a glass."
Right.
And I remember, I'm telling you, it was more like this one right here. It was like a little bit more than this, and he sat and he just drank this whole thing,
just one gulp,
one gulp, and then he went right on stage and he played, and he was so freaking rock and roll, He was the man. He was genius. I mean, obviously he had demons, but
this is also Ricochet, Midtown back then. It's not the same Midtown we have today.
No, we were a little early.
Right.
We were a little early, but I
think
I bet on Midtown.
Right. It was when the Carey family owned it.
Yes.
Right.
I bet Tommy and I, we bet on Midtown over Wynwood. It was this moment we were like, and at the time Wynwood felt still a bit dangerous.
Right.
It's 15 years ago.
Right.
And so
what did you have? Panther, Joey's, and that's it, pretty much. Right?
Yeah. And so, we picked Midtown, and and it was that was sort of my moment of I didn't really want to. At about 2000, it was open for almost 2 years, about 2 years, and then I had like an epiphany, and I was like, I needed a break
Right.
from this business and life. And but the world has changed in terms of like, you know, entertainment. And you know, back then musicians were like just excited to perform.
Right.
You know, I'm not saying they're not excited to perform now,
Yeah.
but how they made their money is different than how they make it now.
Right.
So, you know, they're not often spontaneously just getting up and performing.
Yeah.
It's just the business has changed.
And
but
and
yeah.
we'll obviously get to like the difference between you doing something back then and doing something today. Back then, like doing a Ricochet in like a Midtown, how hard was it for you to open up there? Back
It
then?
wasn't hard at all, actually. We built the whole place.
Right.
At the time, our landlords gave us a really great TI package.
Right.
They really wanted us. There was no movement there. It was kind of stale and slow. And right next to Sugarcane, I don't even know what's there right now, but there was a bunch of restaurants
Yeah.
that had opened and closed and opened and closed.
Still
it was
today,
it was
same
it was
thing
hard.
happening,
It was
right?
complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, that space might have
'Cause I think
some
Eric
bad
even,
juju.
Eric even took that space, right?
Milan.
Yeah.
He might have had it
He had a
also.
Greek restaurant, I think there.
I think you're
Yeah.
right. Yeah, but there were great operators that
Yeah.
couldn't make it in that mall in Midtown, and so we had a great package from the from the landlord, and we went for it. And we rate the whole project for us was $550,000.
How many square feet?
It was 3,000 square feet,
Five.
maybe 3,500 square feet.
The
the whole
550
thing.
soup to nuts.
Soup to nuts.
The
Now
furniture,
I will
fixtures, equipment, everything.
everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, granted, the landlord gave us some TI to do plumbing and a
Right.
few things, etc. But you know, building the place and opening operations cost from buying liquor to whatever else we spent our money on.
What about time wise? Like, how long did it take you guys to open something like that?
It took us about from when the landlords broke ground. It took us about 9 months.
Yep.
You know, I think our part took us about 6 months. We had a guy build it for us who was this like sort of genius lunatic in a way, and
My favorite.
You know, really, he was crazy, but still a nice person, but a little crazy. But he had amazing ideas. You know, half of the wall, the entire space, we used reclaimed wood, and it had this really impressive sort of like design element, but also the sound was fantastic.
Was there a lot of noise complaints back then?
Was there a lot of? No, we didn't, because we also had everybody inside.
Right.
We didn't have much outside.
Right.
People would go outside and smoke, but that was really it. So I know it's a little different there now. There's more outside, but at the time we didn't. So
I think, and then obviously, I know you opened Rumi with Sean Saladino.
Rumi was the first place that I had owned.
Right.
And I was sitting at Chaos.
Right.
And Sean was the marketing director for Chaos.
Right.
Before that, he was with GrooveJet.
Yep.
We weren't
Great party.
super close, but super close. But one of the owners, I remember like yesterday, Tony Theodore and David Sarner asked me about Sean, and I said, "Look, I don't know him well. He seems to do a good job with GrooveJet," and they hired him. They stole him from GrooveJet, and I was doing Thursday nights there,
Right.
and so we became friends. And I'm sitting at the club one night, and I had already been there about a year, and the party was a great party. It was called the World Tour every Thursday, and we do a different theme every week. And there's a gentleman by the name of Mark Wachter, and he's been in Miami for many years, and he was a little bit of a party guy, but super cool and successful. And he turned to me, and he's like, "When are you going to open your own place?" And I was like, "This is fine. It's easy. I'm a young guy." He goes, "Yeah, but you'll make more money." And, and I was like, shit, maybe you're right. And I took that moment, and he wasn't like my advisor. He was
Right.
just a friend, you
Right.
know. And I took that moment, and I turned to Sean the next day, and I said, maybe we should open something, because Sean was doing a great job for them. He goes, "Let's go, let's do it." And we started to go look for spaces. And coincidentally, there was a girl that was a bartender, and she reached out to me, and she said, "I have a guy coming from Mexico who owns a ton of places, and he's asking me to introduce him to somebody that really knows Miami." And his name was Eduardo Castro. And at the time, Eduardo owned Daddy-O's and Daddy
The
Rock
Cancun stuff.
in Cancun.
Oh, I mean, those are
They were
monsters. Every spring breaker knows
yes,
those places.
exactly. And also back then it was all cash.
Yeah, and we've all made poor decisions at Daddy. I think I got my eyebrow pierced one night in Daddy-O's. I think 3 o'clock in the morning.
love that.
Everybody made really bad decisions there. It was great.
He flew us to Mexico. I'd never been to Cancun, and showed us a great time, and became our partner and our only investor in that project.
So let me tell you guys something I see all the time. You take over a second-gen space, you think it's turnkey, but the second you walk in, it's not exactly what you need. Maybe the bar layout doesn't flow, maybe the kitchen's a little outdated, or the bathrooms look like they haven't been touched since the 90s. That's why I tell all my clients, you need to call Brodson Construction. Whether you're building from the ground up or not, you still need the finishing touches done right. Brodson's been local and family-run since 1989. They're the top 1% in Florida, and they've handled everything from luxury homes on Star Island to some of Miami's best retail and restaurant spaces like LPM, Cipriani, Hillstone, Bell Harbor, just to name a few. Bottom line, don't settle for nickel and dime contractors who might underbid the work to win the job up front and screw you over in the end. Brodson maintains integrity every step of the process to build enduring relationships and never exploit clients. So remember, if you're going to build, call Brodson Construction. Look, as a business owner, I'll be real with you. Running my brokerage takes up all my time. And in Miami, if you're not showing up online or on social media, you just don't exist. That's why I've worked with Sage Marketing Studios from the very beginning. Website, social, even this podcast. They're the ones behind the camera. Building strategy, keeping it consistent, and making sure my brand looks like it actually belongs in the city. So just a tip. Stop having your cousin post blurry iPhone pics once every 3 months. Hit up Sage Marketing Studios. You can find them on Instagram at socialmedia.sage and tell them Felix sent you.
So I think first time I met you, the second time I met you was at Rumi. My roommate slash promoting partner at the time was a guy from here named Dom Kapora.
Oh yeah, of course.
And he was really the one that started bringing me down to Miami. His dad, Jimmy, did a bunch of the permitting and stuff. And
I just got goosebumps. Jimmy died. He passed away.
You know what?
It's crazy.
I
I think he got hit by a bus or something. Rest in peace.
I just heard that recently.
Terrible. And Jimmy was Jimmy was a character.
Right.
He was a little bit older than I am, and Dom's father
Right.
and Dom's sister was, I think,
Danielle.
Danielle, yeah. And both of them are amazing, super sweet. But his father, I'd see him like every morning at David's Cafe.
Right.
So
First time he brought me to David's Cafe, 4:30 in the morning after Rumi.
I'd see him all the time, every morning, 5 days a week at David's having a coffee, and he was friends with the owner and did a lot of work.
Yeah, Adrian's dad.
Adrian's father,
Yeah.
that's right, Alfredo.
Right.
So, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's all good. So yes, that was the second time I had met you, and that was the first time I went to Rumi. And we were, me and Dom especially, like, it was always like comparing, or what could we bring that's cool up to Boston. And you guys were just really ahead of your time, and like the DJs and the hip hop in the back, and we weren't doing that up there. It was like one or the other. It wasn't like
all the stars were aligned.
Right.
So sometimes that happens,
Right.
and everything just sort of works. You when you go into a project, even a party, you go into anything, you assume and hope for the best, and you think you're doing the best you can do to make that work.
Right.
And it ended up that one did work. The stars were aligned.
Right.
We had the budget we wanted from our investor. We picked the perfect designer who was out of New York, and she was Nancy Ma is her name. She's still around. She doesn't work as much as she used to, I don't think. But she was, and her then partner in the business was this guy Scott Kester, and it was a complicated space.
Right.
I don't know if you remember Rumi, but it was long. It was very narrow. But there was a second floor that didn't even have stairs to it. It was just used for storage. It was just like literally this concrete block. And so we liked the space because, one, we knew that Chris and Ingrid were going to be doing bar room.
Right.
So we thought, okay, the nightclub is there, and we'll do this restaurant, sort of supper club, lounge, bar. And the space, they did an incredible job. Architecturally, the way it flowed and worked, and the design was, I just posted the other day actually about, I'm in the New York library, and I'm by myself. I'm roaming the city, and I go into this library, and there's this whole like architectural design section, and I'm in there looking, and I see this one book, and I start looking, and there's Rumi,
Right.
And we were in a few books, the design, But it was a special moment. We ended up, the guys that were our chefs, I grew up with both of them, Scott and JD. So the food was spectacular, and you didn't, you know, in a space like this, you didn't expect the food to be at the level that it was. And it was, it just worked. It was great.
Well, I'll tell you how iconic Rumi was. That it was so iconic. Obviously, we both know it was a different Lincoln Road, but it was so iconic that even today, as they're marketing the space, my buddy Jai Robbins has that listing. Big ups to Jai Robbins in-house. They're still advertising it as the Rumi space.
Yeah, they called me. They called me because I posted. I think it was the story I just told. So they messaged me and they were like, "We just saw your Instagram post. Any chance you want to come back to the Rumi space?" And I was like, "No, thank you."
God bless that guy. God bless him for trying.
For trying, of course, absolutely. We have to. And look, you know, I love Lincoln Road.
You know, actually, wouldn't have been a crazy idea.
No, look, could it work? I have people all the time saying, "Bring back Rumi, do Rumi again." Figure, you know, It was a moment, and it was really it was quite special. And I mean, like, you know, Rumi was a poet.
Right.
A Persian.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, so give me the breakdown.
Rumi was a Persian poet.
Okay.
Okay, and Rumi was all about spontaneous performance. He had never written down any of his own poetry.
Yep.
This was like the 13th century, 14th century, and he had disciples. He had followers. He'd come down from the mountains, and people would be like waiting for him, and he would just sit there and he would spew. He was like a hip hop artist. Honestly, he was like the Eminem of that moment.
Right.
And so people would write down what he would say, and translations. Thousands of translations have been made from the Sanskrit writings of that time, but it was all about spontaneous performance. That's all. It was about food and love and wine, romantic love, and so for me that sort of translated into everything that I wanted the space to be, and it was about enjoying food and beverages and spontaneous performance. So we had in 5 years, we had like 25 performances there that were all like magical, from like Vince Neil, you know, from Motley Crue,
love it. Yeah.
you know, Goo Goo Dolls doing an acoustic set, Seal on a piano by himself in the middle of the room. I mean, the list goes on. Erykah Badu. I paid Erykah Badu $2,500.
That's how you.
And it was incredible. It was. I mean, I have pictures. I have all of this stuff. You know, Kevin Bacon and his brother, because he has a band, the Bacon Brothers. You know, I remember being in the office. That was our green room, and Manny, who was the photographer of Miami at the time, and you know, and he's put out a couple books. But Manny took a picture of us, and you know, in the office, and so it was. I mean, Bill Clinton had a dinner there for 20 people. I remember Britney Spears. We did one of her birthdays there. It was. I mean, the list goes on. You know,
Would you bring Rumi back? Would you ever bring Rumi back?
So so our designer who did Giselle is from South Africa, and he's amazing, Tristan. And Tristan and I became really close during the process of doing Giselle. And I didn't know him. He was introduced by the TRP, the Restaurant People group. They used him for Juice and Java up there in Fort Lauderdale. But I got to know him, and we became really close. And he started doing all this research on me and learning about me. And he's like, "Why don't we do Rumi?" And he wanted to do it. And I was like, I don't know. And I thought about it for a minute, and I reached out to the team, and I was like, "What do you guys think? It's not my idea." And they were like, "We should just." Tim basically was like, "I don't like to bring back old brands." And I said, "You're right. Let it live at its time." And
how do you feel? Like, you know, obviously they're bringing back China Grill. I heard rumors and rumblings of possibly them bringing back Asia to Cuba. You know, how do you feel about?
Here's how I really feel.
Sure.
How I really feel is get a little creative. And I mean that. And I'm not like putting anybody down. You know, for me, it's like if you look at the Restaurant People, even as an example, we don't have a duplicate of any brand. Now, that doesn't mean we won't, because I believe we're going to at some point. But for me, it's like I want to look at the landscape. I want to understand, like, you know, every space tells its own story. Like, what does the space look like? Where does it belong geographically? You know, I mean, if we're in Wynwood, what belongs there? So we have projects that are coming in Wynwood.
East side or west side?
We haven't even talked about it. Like I haven't even been public totally about it. I did one announcement when we signed the
I
deal.
heard with the FinVarb guys.
That's right. We're doing 2 projects with them.
Right. East side or west side of Northwest?
Well, I guess depends on where, but one is on the east side.
Okay.
And one is actually they're both on the east side, but one's right off of Northwest 2nd Avenue.
Okay.
And one's a few blocks east of Northwest 2nd Avenue. But one's a 115 room hotel. Second floor will have a restaurant and we'll have a rooftop bar.
First Avenue?
I mean, I'll tell you, it's no secrets.
Right. Big announcement coming in.
Here we
Big
go.
announcement coming in.
Announcement. So do you know where the Nomad is?
Yes.
So it's literally just east of the Nomad on 28th Street.
Yes.
Kind of in the middle of that block right
Yes.
there. FinFarb had the location.
Yep.
We have an amazing working relationship and partnership with their group.
You got because you're a Rosa Sky.
We have Rosa, right? Which is on. He developed that property, and it's his hotel. He manages it now, but we get along.
Right.
I mean, Brian, who works with the team, is a partner, and he sort of manages the company. It's like he's head of operations. We love everybody there. So Rochelle is Bobby's wife, and she kind of spearheads the design stuff, and it just syncs.
You have your team
It's
down, right?
Yeah.
You took the Giselle Rosa Sky formula, and you're just going with it, right?
We are going to do 2 new brands.
Okay.
In the hotel, so it'll be a Hyatt flag.
Awesome.
And we'll have a concept which will be approachable, fun. Hopefully it's sort of a niche that will fill in the Wynwood area, and that'll be on the 2nd floor, and then about a 75 seat restaurant, and then on the roof, it's a fun concept. I was walking in New York City and I came up with this idea, and it was going to be a restaurant first, and then Tim's like, "Why don't we use that concept but change it a little bit, and we use it for the rooftop there?" And I was like, "Let's go! I love it." So it's we haven't broke ground yet. We'll probably in about 3 months we'll break ground, give or take, waiting on some permit stuff, but I'm super excited. The design is amazing, and it's all sort of falling into place. So.
Right. I mean, a lot of people are very hit and miss on rooftops. Me personally, I love rooftops. I think that you guys really paved the way for rooftops. I mean, I know we have Sugar and you had Astra. What made you decide to do, a Rosa Sky in Brickell, really not on Brickell Ave or in Mary Brickell Village? You kind of went off of the path a little bit, and you just nailed it.
So you asked me earlier how I met Tim Petrillo.
Right.
So I'm at this hotel and this party, and Susan Penrod, who is the publicist for TRP, I ran into her, and she said, "Hi," and I've known her for many years. Not a dear friend, but I've known her for a while. And she said, "I'm with Tim." And I said, "Tim who?" And she goes, "Tim Petrillo." And I still had a blank sort of stare on my face. I didn't know who Tim Petrillo was. I said, "I'm sorry, I don't know who that is." And she's like, "You don't know Tim? You guys got to meet. I'm going to get him."
Well, because Miami and Fort Lauderdale are 2 different universes.
Especially back then.
Right.
I mean, Fort Lauderdale's grown up a lot.
Yes.
And
it's big time.
it's amazing.
It's
amazing
to those
now.
guys.
100%.
I mean, I would say 70% is because of those guys.
sure.
Putting them on a culinary map, at least.
Absolutely. Yeah. They don't get enough credit.
They don't.
You want to know the real
don't.
truth? And I say this for this moment. And it's not because I am connected to them, but in Miami, nobody talks about what the restaurant people is. They don't know it. And Tim and I said hello. We started talking. What I loved about Tim is that he's really smart. I mean, this is the real truth. He's a really, really smart guy, and he knew a lot about me.
Right.
And I love that. And I don't mean that for my ego, because I was like, here's this guy who knows everything about Miami and all the players that were down here. And we started talking, and we became friends.
Right.
He always likes to say we dated before we got married.
Was this before Yo and Fork and Balls, or after?
No. This was during COVID.
Oh, so this was literally 5 years ago.
I didn't know it was so Rosa Sky has been open since
22, right?
It's been open. Yeah, it's been open for 3 years and 7 months to
Right.
be exact. So this was about 5 years ago, 4 years and a half, whatever the number was, we met and we ended up chatting a little bit. The truth is that I had no intention of getting back in the business at that moment. And I still hadn't even gone to really any, YOLO I had been to maybe once. And we became friendly though. And so one day I woke up early in the morning and I had this sort of epiphany that, and a little bit, I have told this story before, I blame it because of Instagram. I'm scrolling through Instagram and I'm by myself at 6 in the morning. I'm having coffee and my wife is sleeping and I'm looking at Instagram and I'm looking at these guys who own a bunch of places and I'm like, damn, maybe I should do this again.
Right.
And so I texted him, I mean, honestly, it may be at 6:15 in the morning. And I knew Tim woke up early because we've spoken about it. And I wrote him and I said, if I want to open something in Miami, do you want to be my partner? And he literally right away writes back, he says, yes. I said, but Tim, I don't want to just open one place. I want to open a bunch of places as fast as we can.
Right.
He said, let's meet. And we did. And we went to Michael's Genuine.
Love Michael Schwartz.
Yes, agreed. That's another conversation we could have. But ended up, we're sitting there and we're having a great talk and lunch is over. And he doesn't tell me anything about the space where Rosa Sky is. He goes, come on, you got more time? I said, sure. He goes, get in the car. I want to show you something. So we're driving down and we're going almost over the bridge where Brickell City Center is. Right. And he goes, you see that building right there, the black and white one? He goes, we could have the rooftop of that space. He goes, I've been negotiating with the developer. I said, well, let's go see it. Great, you know. And now keep in mind, I wasn't going out. Right. I really wasn't going out. Unless I traveled, maybe I'd go somewhere for dinner.
And this is COVID when everything's closed.
This was COVID. Right. Everything was closed. People were still wearing their masks.
Nobody knew when things were going to open. Nobody knew really when.
Completely. Right. You're right.
And you guys were still taking a chance on a new space.
That's right.
Interesting.
And he says to me, I'll set up, we'll go see the space. I said, great. We go see the space. I go up there. And it wasn't even the real elevator. It was the side elevator, the construction elevator. Right. And anyway, we go up there, and I turned to him, and I was like, we could do this. Right. And he's like, all right, if you think we can do it, then let's figure it out. That night, I went home, and I literally came up with what Rosa Sky should be.
And Rosa Sky was named after what?
Well, it was, so the view, the sun sets to the west. Right. And when you're at Rosa Sky, you can't see it. At a certain moment, it leaves and it's over. Right. But the reflection from the sun against all the buildings and the sky, depending on the clouds, it literally will have pink and purple. And essentially, it's like, it's like a rainbow. Right. And I took a few pictures that night, and I'm at my desk, and I'm doing what I do, and trying to sort of like find some creative energy, and I started putting words down and playing around, and the AC brand, and I didn't know much about the AC brand at the time. The AC brand, the first one was from Spain, and so I looked it up, and I was like, all right, it's going to be on top of an AC. It's Spain. We're in Miami, Spanish, so. I remember calling it Pink Sky or Vanilla Sky. There were so many names I had on this little piece of paper. But then I thought Miami, it's from Spain. Let's have a little Spanish influence. So I turned pink into Rosa. Right. And then I connected it with Sky, and I lived with that for about a half hour, an hour. And I was like, Rosa Sky, I love Rosa Sky. I always say to myself, like, do I want to go to this place? Like, let's go to Rosa Sky tomorrow. Right. Like, so it flowed. It worked for me. And then I just started coming up with what the brand meant. Right. And over. I mean, a lot of it happened that night, but it took a little bit of time. I started going out. Again. Yep.
A lot of you know me from my F&B Miami page, but what you might not know is that I also run Florida's largest restaurant real estate brokerage called F&B Hospitality. Every week I meet somebody that thought that they could just wing it on a restaurant lease. And every week on F&B Miami, you guys see how that turns out. And that is exactly why I started F&B Hospitality Brokerage. We treat our clients' money like it's our money. We don't say things just to say it or paint pretty little pictures. We go based on facts and numbers. If we don't like a deal, location, or permit status, we are absolutely not afraid to tell you. It's about setting you up to last. fast. So you could focus on food and foodies while we negotiate the build out and the terms.
How is that getting back into the swing of things? Because now, okay, you took an 8-year hiatus. I mean, the world has changed.
The real
It's not what it was when we used to promote.
it was really 8.5 years. But you know, in that time frame, almost a decade, from going out a lot, being part of that, you know, world,
Right.
to then not going out at all, it took me like I wanted to understand it. I wanted to understand what Miami meant at night. So I started going out a lot. Sometimes often I was alone.
Right.
Because all of my friends were like not going out anymore. You know, let's be married and kids. And I'm married, but I have no children.
Right.
And I started to sort of like look at the landscape. I went to every single nightclub. I mean, here's the real truth. I didn't even care about house music before that.
Right, but like we're talking about the landscape. So when you're promoting, the industry goes through transition. Sometimes it's the mega club. It goes down to the lounges.
Yes.
Goes back to the mega clubs. The music changes. With it being COVID and not knowing, okay, which direction the industry is going to go into, how did you kind of pivot towards what you wanted to do in terms of Rosa Sky creativity concept? And
you know, when I made that decision in that morning,
right.
texting Tim, I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do.
Right.
All right. I just knew that I wanted to get back in the game and do something.
Right.
I always was a little bit more nightlife than restaurant. So I think that the opportunity just sort of happened. It wasn't, I think it picked us, like it picked me in a way. You know, I ended up just seeing this and feeling it, and I thought like this could work. I didn't really know if it was going to work or not. That's the real truth.
Right.
I mean, I remember going out like as we got close, like for months.
Right.
Look, I knew I could pick up my phone and 500 people were in my phone,
Right.
and they'd come one time.
Right.
But is that going to make your place?
Right.
No. I knew that I had to go out, and I pretended like I knew nobody.
Right.
And it was very rare. A lot of people didn't know who I was because it all changed. They didn't.
People were younger
Tons
now,
of people
right.
didn't know. I mean, there was a random person here and there that knew me, but
heard of you,
or heard of me,
right.
but not really. Like Dave Grutman was there and he knew me,
Right.
but we weren't like
Right.
the best of friends. Or I mean, he was super sweet. I'd go to Live once. I started doing that a little bit, and 11 I had only been to one time, and still even to that point, I really didn't even go yet.
Right.
Go back, I should say. And so I just sort of like I threw myself out there, and I had cards made that said Rosa Sky, and I started going out, and I just started meeting people again. Really, I mean, honestly, I went super grassroots.
Right.
I went like as if
You're a street team promoter, kind of like looking at.
So
everybody.
the first few parties I threw when I was a kid, when I was 18, I made flyers and I'd walk on the sand and I'd introduce myself to everybody. I'd say hi to people. Didn't matter who it was, honestly. There
was no cell
Of course,
phones
I
back
love
then.
women.
There was,
There were girls
all over the beach.
There were men,
Yep.
straight or
Yep.
gay. I didn't care.
Listen, you're talking about the Versace days where everybody in Miami Beach was beautiful.
Well, also everybody was also welcomed at the time.
Yeah.
It wasn't as, I know this sounds weird because we're years later, but like there wasn't segregated really.
Right.
It
was all one.
It was all one, yeah. Which was also really special about what Miami Beach was. But Rosa Sky just sort of fell. It was like how I said, the stars were all aligned, really. So.
But this was your first rooftop project.
It was my first rooftop project. Yes.
What was your experience opening a rooftop? Like, what are some of the challenges? Like for somebody that's opening, what are some of the challenges? I know that, we did a rooftop in Wynwood originally for Kasaki, and then we had wound up selling the lease for a great number, just the plans and permits, because they didn't want to go through the whole city thing, to the La Furnitura guys. And even with the plans and the permits, it still took a couple of years.
Well, the thing that made it easy for us is that the Finfar group was developing this property.
Right.
Now, they had this space sort of set up to have a bar, to have a little kitchen in the back. They didn't know what they were going to do.
They didn't, but
It's
what
not
about Grease
It's
Trap?
not what they do.
Right.
Yeah, it's all set.
Grease
That was
Trap's
all.
already-
Everything
right.
was done.
Okay.
They were opening. They were designing, all permitted. They were designing a space.
Right.
when I say designing, no furniture, no colors. It was all concrete. Maybe they picked out the flooring.
Right.
But they had a space spec'd, ready to go to have a restaurant bar there of some kind. And which is why they went to the restaurant people.
Right.
And they knew Brian and Aaron and Tim
Aaron's
knew
great,
each
yeah.
other from Tallahassee.
Yep.
Because the restaurant, Tim developed a whole property up there, and they still have a restaurant, a bar up there. And so they got into conversations, and that's how they sort of connected, and we're going to do this space. But, you know, look, you never know how something's going to work.
Right.
And even at the time, the view was spectacular,
Yep.
but it was a little west.
Yes.
You know, are people going to come this on the other side of the trail? You know, the
What
train.
they're calling West Brickell, now,
Right.
right?
That's right.
Right.
Look, but there was also a few things that had already popped up in
American Social.
American Social, but that was a little lowbrow.
Right.
But I mean, over on 8th Street.
Right.
So, you know, you had Ball and Chain, I think, was already there, I believe.
That's right.
You know, there were a few spots that
Right.
people would go to. So, you know,
Well, also, you have your boy Bink across the street.
Bink's across the street.
Blackbird.
That's
and
right.
Then you had Stanzio in 87. You had Toasted.
There were a few things
Yeah,
that were
yeah, you
there.
had
There was
cool
some
stuff.
energy
Local stuff,
happening.
yeah, and
Yes.
all local, which is great.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so we ended up, you know, we went for it. I mean,
Right.
that's the truth. We went for it, and there were there complications? Look, I think when you're doing a rooftop, it's like you're always gonna, especially depending on how open it is.
Yep.
Rosa's pretty open,
Right.
so rain affects us, wind affects us. The way it's laid out in terms of the wind is that there's always a little breeze up there.
What about sound? And then you got like the music.
Sound, we've had some issues,
Right.
but we also upgraded as time has gone on, and we have a really sophisticated sound. And, you know, we'll get a call here and there, and we
Yeah.
try and respect our neighbors,
Right.
but it's worked. People love it.
What do you say? To
I
any-
love it.
Right.
I
but-
love going there and being there. It's the truth. You know, it's important for me as a customer.
Right.
I love going out. This is what I do.
What do you say to
know.
anybody that's like, oh, I want to open a rooftop. I want to open a bar or restaurant on a rooftop. Like, what are some things that you're going to have to deal with? Like, what are some of the challenges that you're going to
Well,
have?
you're asking people to go into a building, go up an
Right.
escalator, or go up an elevator.
Right.
And it's, you know, every time there's like another step to get someone in there to spend their money,
Yep.
it gets a little complicated.
Right.
You know, are people willing to go in and go up the elevator and go up 22 floors? I think rooftops have become, over the last decade, much more acceptable, and people love them.
Yeah.
Especially women love them.
Right.
They love taking their pictures. I think it just depends on sort of the location, what the space looks like, what the concept is going
Yeah.
to be. You know, I think we love rooftops. I'm
Right.
not, you know, Giselle is on top of 11.
And speaking
You
of,
know.
so I remember listening to you on my boy Kiko and Eddie's show Day in Miami, and that was the first time I'm like, this fucking guy Alan, he gets it. When they asked you about neighborhoods, and I've been preaching downtown for years. I'm like, guys, downtown, I'll take downtown over Brickell, right, you know, for the last couple of years, because I know what's going to be there based on what's happened there. And when you said, you know, when you were preaching downtown, this is a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I'm like, this fucking guy gets it. He's gonna kill it. So then, how did Giselle wind up?
So Rosa Sky wasn't even open yet.
Right.
And we were about, I don't know, 3 months away, let's say, maybe a little bit more. And I ran into Michael Simpkins.
Yep.
And
You grew up with him, right?
I grew up with Michael. Right. Michael's older brother, David, was one of my best friends growing up.
Right.
But I was with the family always. I love them all, Michelle and Ron, and they're all amazing. I used to sleep over their house all the time. Their father,
Right.
Leon, I always wake up early no matter what time I go to bed, and Leon would be down there like reading the newspaper, this like genius of a man. And anyway, I run into Michael, and we hug. How are you? What are you doing now? And I was like, oh, I'm getting back in the business. I'm doing a cocktail bar, and I called it a cocktail bar
Right.
at first. And I said, I'm going to open a cocktail bar in Brickell,
Right.
small place. And I said, I'm teaming up with the restaurant people, and I said they have a bunch of restaurants in Fort Lauderdale, and I said, and he stopped me and he's like, you know, we're looking for a restaurant group, somebody to take the roof
Because
of 11.
they had already built out a restaurant.
They had Touche.
Right.
And it was open for maybe a year and a half,
Right.
2 years. I don't know the exact
Right.
number, but it didn't really work.
Right.
They tried to do it on their own.
Right.
They just, I guess it was called like the roof at 11, whatever they
Right.
called it. And I think they had some good nights, but it didn't really translate.
Right.
So they had already been looking for months and months, and we went and saw it the next day. I called Tim and I said, "Do you know what 11 is?" And he's like, "Of course."
Right.
And I was like, "Let's go." They're looking for us for somebody to take over the space up on the top. Do you want to let's go look at it? He comes down. We do a walkthrough with Brett Friedman.
Yep.
You probably know. And I turned to Tim and he looked at me and we're like, let's figure this out. Let's try and get this. We called Michael right away and I said, how long do what's the process? I know you've been looking. They were talking to, Mila and a bunch of groups,
All the big groups,
and, and, who are we? Like,
Right.
but I said, let us put together a concept. He said, I go, can we get in this mix and potentially try and get it? And he said, how long do you need to come up with a concept? And I said, you tell me, can we have 10 days? And
And this is what year was this?
Well, it was 22.
Okay.
Yeah, it was 20.
So we got out of
20.
COVID.
It was still in COVID. I mean, it was
Right.
it was the ending.
But
in a way.
downtown was still a little rough. I mean, you had what, all day there? Was space open? Was space reopened at the time, or
At that very moment, I think it probably had just reopened.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how long they were quiet for.
Right.
But 11, I don't even know was open at the moment.
Right.
I think they shut down for a period. I mean, like the first, maybe 6 months of COVID, whenever that.
Yeah, but they bounced out pretty. I mean, they were one of the first ones to like
For
really
sure.
bounce.
Well,
like, open and
Gold Rush
Right.
was that's another story. But
Gold Rush.
they really capitalized. Gold Rush was one of the winners that
Right.
really, I mean, it helped sort of put Gold Rush
But
on
again,
a
like,
different level.
I know why I like downtown, and I see the future of downtown. Why at that moment did you guys take a chance on downtown?
Timeout. You're on top of 11.
Doesn't
Let's
suck.
just start there.
Doesn't suck. Right.
Probably at that moment, the most successful nightclub
By far.
maybe in the country or
By
the
far.
world.
100%.
They had a great team.
Right.
I mean, still do. I went there again.
Yep.
And I remember going. I wanted to see what it was like at night because I had only been there for the grand opening, and went there. And my wife and I went. And Gino, who now I'm close with, but at the time I didn't know Gino really. And Gino welcomed us, and it was super fun, and his amazing self. And Gino's like, this is the space. So going back, Michael Simpkins was like, you can have 2 weeks, and I was like, okay. So we came up with Giselle, and we came up with a deck, and we named it, and came up with the whole concept. And they brought Tim and the team brought Tristan to the table to design it. Luckily, Tristan had been to 11 once before.
Right.
So that project then happened. They loved our concept. We need a deal. I'll go back to downtown in one moment, but what's amazing is talking about the stars all being aligned. Giselle opened exactly the same day, 1 year later after Rosa Sky.
Oh, wow.
The exact same day. It wasn't
Little
planned.
anniversary. Like,
Wasn't planned.
Right.
It just happened.
wow.
It was the Thursday before Super Bowl. Our Wednesday before Super Bowl, that was our first night that we had people, and it was our first friends and family.
Right.
But I liked downtown because it felt like finally there was a little bit of traction happening. Dan Binkowitz opened a bar there.
That's right.
Other people started opening places there.
We had the Bright Line. We knew World Center was eventually going to be
That's
there.
right.
Right.
It just felt a little cleaner. Is it still there yet? No. Look, 11 isn't really. I don't look at 11th Street as downtown. But finally now with World Center, with more of these buildings opening up, the 11 towers,
Yep.
A few others, obviously. I think it's all will be considered downtown in a way.
Right.
But I'm still a fan. I wish that Moshe Mana would sort of get his act together.
I spoke
a
to
little
him.
bit.
You know what? I actually met with him. I spoke to him. I went into his office. He presented the plans and
it's taking too long,
who's
though.
going. And, You know what? But before, where I wasn't like sure if I think he's finally ready to do
We'll
it.
see.
I hope so.
We'll
you know?
see. I don't know. Look, I'm not involved with the development side
Right.
of what they're doing down there. I know that years later, we're still sitting here, and
Right.
there's a lot of buildings that
Yep.
should be cleaned up.
Yeah.
That are sitting vacant, that have nothing. There's no, create art studios.
Right.
Do something. Like make it like, I don't know. I'm not here to tell anybody what to do, but I do believe in downtown
Right.
still. I love it. I love all of Miami. Honestly, like I went to Coconut Grove the other day. At some point I'd like for us to have something
Right.
down there. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of Wynwood. I think, what that's become is just really so special, and what it's going to be a year, 2, 3, 5 from now.
So actually, since you touched the subject, talk to me about what does Alan Roth look for in a neighborhood for a concept? Like right now, obviously back in the day, it was Miami Beach. That's all there was. And I feel that Miami Beach personally, just kept getting more and more expensive, and people just started going to other neighborhoods because they can definitely afford it. So now, you have Brickell, you have Midtown, you have Downtown, you have Coconut Grove, you have Coral Gables, Miracle Mile.
Yeah, it's amazing.
What are some of your favorite neighborhoods to like possibly do a concept or just to grab dinner and hang
Well,
out?
all the ones you've just named. I don't spend a lot of time in Coral Gables. That's probably like the least, area that I
Right.
go to. But I love Wynwood. I love the Brickell area.
Right.
For me, those two are very special. Even Midtown finally now feels like its own little neighborhood, and I love sitting there. And there's a couple restaurants that I go to that I love. Downtown, like we just spoke about, I'd like to see that sort of, kind of like when the Flagler opens up will be great. I really, I go everywhere.
Right.
I don't have like a specific neighborhood. I live in the Upper East Side area,
Right.
Mimo district.
Right.
I go there.
It's my favorite.
It's amazing. I went for brunch at Fukia. It was so good and so nice. And like for me, if I could walk somewhere, I love all of it. I mean, I had a meeting yesterday. Guy has I won't be too specific, but a guy has a restaurant in the Mary Brickell Village area.
Okay.
Okay.
Fair enough.
And I didn't know him, never met him before, and he reached out to me, and he said, "Will you come meet me? I have this space, and it's an existing restaurant, but he has another space that he was checking to see if I would."
Checking a pulse.
That's right,
Right.
and if I would be interested in partnering up with him,
Right.
and I said, well, we kept talking again. I never met this gentleman, and I said, well, have you ever been to Rosa Sky? You know my places, and I said, well, you've been to Rosa, right? He's like, no, and I was like, okay. I was like, well, have you been to Giselle? No. This is a guy that owns restaurants, okay?
Right.
So, look, I don't know what it's like to have children, but at the end of the day, for me, I can only speak to myself. I love going out.
Right.
I love eating at different restaurants, from little places to fancy places. For me, it's my favorite thing to do. I love nightclubs. I love bars. I love watching all of it happen. I love watching a place fill up.
Right.
I want to get there and be the first one sometimes and watch it happen. So for me, it's like, how do you own places and not go out?
Right.
I want to go out everywhere. I want to know who's doing what. I want to be not only inspired, but be knowledgeable about what everybody's doing.
Right.
And I like to support people. I want to go to other people's businesses and spend my money and frequent there. And,
Right.
So for me, it's I love all these neighborhoods, really. I mean, going back to the question, I do. There's so many places in all these neighborhoods that I love.
Last year and a half, I've seen cracks in just the city and the industry. And, I'm sure you, like a lot of people, I did this video when I thought I was going to be out of a job for a year called Restaurant Armageddon, because I'm like, oh, the city is fucked with like what I see based on the numbers. So I did this video called Restaurant Armageddon. Almost cost me my career. I had a lot of backlash, had a lot of support. But what we did see was that there were so many restaurants that came in during COVID from all over the world, all over. They were going into build outs. They were building out new spaces. They were taking second gens. It didn't matter. But then there was just a big bulk of people that are not from here. that just started building out. And now, it took 3 years for some of them to open. And this summer, I'm sure you've heard, a lot of restaurants did close this year. And, obviously there's more on the way, but for people that are local, it shouldn't really be a surprise. It shouldn't be a surprise, but how do you see the city, the permitting, opening up? What advice do you give people who kind of think that opening in Miami is super easy?
Well, look, that's a tough question, but I'll do the best I can here.
Right.
But look, building anything from scratch,
Right.
first and foremost, is never easy. There's always hoops you have to go through. I think it's complicated. Look, I don't like the bureaucracy of, what goes into, the permitting phases and, getting things done.
Right.
But I think that, and I don't think that it's always fair
Right.
to the restaurateur. I think you talked about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Where some of the landlords are charging this whole period of time. I mean,
Rent, back rent.
it's like, look, it's going to take you, 6 months, 9 months, a year, whatever the number is,
Right.
to build this,
Right.
to get things permitted, so, I had a little social media, post that I did where when you're opening something, have enough funding that can last as if you didn't have any business for the first 6 months. Nobody walks in your
Right.
door. And I think that's kind of the biggest problem. Often businesses are underfunded.
Right.
Look, everything is complicated in life.
Of course. Right.
And our business is one of the most complicated and difficult ones.
Right.
That's the truth.
Right.
We don't become, unless you have 20 restaurants, or you've built a brand like Pura Vida, let's
Right.
say, who have done an amazing
Incredible.
job.
Talk about a guy that knows every cent to what every prepping and every number and he knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, they did a great job, and I love that. And they're nice people.
Great, almost great, yeah.
My mom knew him, more than I did.
Right.
The husband and wife. But every in this business, it's complicated. It's like, how do you fill the seats?
Right.
Are you charging enough? But what I was getting was, this business is a more long-term play.
Right.
Look at nightclubs. We have really three. At the end of the day, we have three
Right.
nightclubs.
Right.
Live, Space, and 11.
Correct.
At the end of the day.
Right.
And others have tried to sort of break through. It's not easy. But my advice always is make sure you're bringing on the right team.
Right.
Make sure you have the right architect. Make sure you have the right GC.
Right.
And then make sure you're funded. That's always my advice. I always tell people, there was a period of time when I say I wasn't working, I had a couple consulting jobs. And, the first thing I always said to these people was, before they gave me any money, I said, here's my first advice. Don't do it.
Right.
Don't do it.
Right.
And they look at me like I'm a lunatic, like I'm crazy, because if I don't tell them to do it,
Right.
I'm not getting paid.
Yeah.
If I tell them to do it, then I'm getting paid.
Well, guess what? Every
know.
call that I get when somebody that I don't know says, "Oh, you're the restaurant guy. I want to open a restaurant." My first question is always, why?
Right.
Do you either want to lose money? Like, do you have existing locations?
Right.
Do you,
That's
no, but I was a manager and I'm bringing in this DJ and I
Right.
have this investor.
Right.
And I'm like, you're going to build out a space for somebody else that knows what they're doing to take over.
Right.
Where
Where was that location? No, I'm just kidding.
We'll talk after. We'll talk after about the. But even guys like Roman Jones, I think that he's got it in terms of he's buying all his own real estate now. He's literally putting same thing with the Mila guys. They're buying all the real estate for their concept.
Completely.
It works. It doesn't work. Catch bought the building from Ravani.
Right.
I mean, I think that's a great escape plan because if business doesn't work out,
Right.
you're not going to lose all that TI you put into it.
Look, it's always it's an ideal. It's ideal to buy the dirt for
Right.
sure.
Right.
Tim negotiated a great space for a new condo going up on Las Olas.
Right.
And we bought the condo on the ground floor for a
Right.
restaurant, and I'm part of that.
Right.
And I was like, it's great. That's what we want, of course. The 2 projects we're doing in Wynwood with Bobby, we own the dirt with Bob. You know, we're part of that deal. So it's it's ideal to own the dirt if you can, of course. It doesn't always work that way.
Right.
You know, but it's still always complicated. You
But
know,
you're an interesting animal because where I'm always preaching second gen, Rosa Sky, Giselle, even Giselle.
Giselle is second gen.
It was.
I mean, we stripped the whole
you
place.
Really. So, you know, when you're pulling those permits, it's almost like it's not a second gen because
Right.
the permitting is still the same. And if you're changing the capacity, all that stuff, you're still doing like new. And now with your new project, same thing. So it's like, what do you know that a lot of people don't? They get stuck in the whole building out game.
Well, you just said Roman Jones.
Roman, yep.
Okay, so I've known Roman a long time, and I remember one time, and we're not like that close,
Right.
but I like him and I respect what he does. And Roman and I were chatting one day, and he said to me, he goes, "My biggest success was the opium at the Amnesia space, where Story was."
Right.
And I said, "Really? You know, you got a bunch of these." He goes, "Yeah, because I took opium and we spent about $50,000
Right.
and we opened this nightclub."
Right.
He's like, "That's my biggest success. That's
Right.
the genius of
Right.
it." You know, and you know, it's like the Smoke and Mirror show, like I said, like with Chaos.
Right.
That was a nightclub before the Chaos guys had it. They put up some drapes, put down some carpet, brought in a used sound system, and opened a nightclub.
Right.
And you know, it doesn't always work, but if you can make it work and you take a second generation space, then it is genius, you know, and it is great. Giselle was that, but we did strip the whole thing and we did spend some money.
Right.
But it's also, you know, a design and hopefully a concept that'll be there for, you know, couple decades.
Right.
You know, so 11 guys own the property. You know, we have an amazing relationship with them, and you know, 2 years and 7 months, and it's going well. Is it perfect yet? No, but it's getting there. We're constantly working on it. So I like second generation spaces. Just so happens, you know, we've had some that aren't second generation
Right.
spaces, and we have to spend more money.
But do you feel that also a big problem with that is, you know, I find permitting is like really fucking with people. Look at the Amnesia space, you know, south of Fifth Neighborhood Association deaded that whole entertainment live music thing and started restricting what time you could serve liquor until all the way up to 23rd and Collins. I
Yeah.
think maybe even further now. But do you think that's going to affect the long-term future of nightlife in Miami Beach?
Well, I think it already has affected the long term
Right.
in Miami Beach, really. I mean,
right, 'cause you
know,
said it yourself, it's
there's a
like-
handful of places
Right.
that you can go to in Miami Beach.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
I mean, honestly, you know, Mila's amazing. Sweet Liberty.
Yep.
You know, I mean, maybe there's a few other little places,
Right.
but it's not amazing.
Right.
You know, I think South Beach has lost its excitement, which makes me sad.
Right.
That's where I'm from. Those
Right.
are the streets that I grew up on, and you know, I'm hoping that with a lot of the redevelopment of those hotels
Yep.
that are on Collins, that it'll bring some energy again.
I mean, I think it will. I think the future.
I hope
I think
so.
Miami Beach will be back in 4 years. I don't think Lincoln Road will be back, but I believe that, you know, Collins from like the one hotel all the way to Soho House with the Aman and Rosewood and Cipriani's. I mean, like, it's almost impossible for it not to come back. I
Yeah.
feel, you know?
No, I look. I agree, but we've been talking about this a long time now.
Right.
You know, it's like a decade ago. I remember having this exact same conversation.
Right.
You know, so you know, I don't have a crystal ball. I hope it turns around. There's still places that are doing well, but you know, it's all cyclic. You know, it goes through cycles.
Right.
You know, and hopefully that one has like another cycle. You know.
Do you see anybody doing it right? Obviously, aside from you guys, do you see any group kind of like doing it right? Like, that's who's doing it right. That's what.
Yeah, I think there's a few great groups. I mean, look, we just said Mila.
Right.
I think what those guys.
Number 2 in the country, you can't.
They're
dispute
amazing.
That.
They're
Right.
amazing.
Right.
That's the reality.
Right.
They do a great job. You know, is Mila my favorite restaurant in the world?
Right.
No, but it does it. It works.
Right.
What I like about those guys is that if you look at Mila itself,
Right.
you know, when they first opened, it wasn't bangbusters.
Right.
They had some business, of course, but they shut down when COVID hit, and they made changes. And I think that's really smart. You know, I think that we go into a business and we believe it's going to be one way.
Yep.
And often it's not. And if you have the ability to like sort of adapt and figure it out and change, you know, they built out the rest of their
Right.
awning system. They brought in a new chef. They added the fire dancer. You know, they did all these things. And look, the stars were aligned for them in that moment because they reopened and there was a perception that it was outdoors and
Right.
that it was okay.
Right.
It was during COVID. I love what the guys from Space, I love what those guys do.
Right.
You know, for me, the real answer is, and I'll say this here, they're the coolest guys in Miami.
A lot of people have said that. A lot of
Hands
people have said
down,
that.
you know, what David and his team have done with Space. Let's just start there.
Right.
With Space itself is remarkable. It's a true Miami music culture that we really didn't have before. That's the
Right.
real truth. We didn't have that before, and they made it clean.
Right.
You know what I mean? They made it
All
place,
about the music.
They made it all about the music. But Space for years, like it, didn't like it.
Right.
It was really a place where you went for after hours.
Right.
And on all kinds of drugs.
Right.
And now it's like people are going there at midnight. People go there at 2 a.m.
I know people that go there at 7 a.m.
Then people go at 7 a.m.
Right.
I've done that.
Wow.
I wanted to do it. This was like my moment
Right.
again, like coming back and going out again. And everybody's talking about going there at 7 a.m. And I did. I woke up at 7. I got there at 7:30. It was the first time I think they had John Summit.
Right.
And I went, a couple years ago, and I went alone. And I went, and I had a meeting. This is a true story. I had a meeting with Michael Comras
Right.
at scheduled for 11 or 11:30, and I left Space. I stayed at Space for 3 hours, and then I left there. I went straight to my meeting, and I think I don't even know if I admitted it to Michael
Right.
about that, but I
I'm sure
remember.
I'm sure he
I
could've saw it.
remember that
I'm sure he
moment.
saw it.
But those guys are doing a great job.
They opened La Rosa, right? La Rosa's them or no?
Say that one more time?
La Rosa, the new place in Alapata.
Did it open already?
Yeah.
Oh.
I think a week ago.
If they opened, I don't know. I haven't heard about it yet. I knew there was talk about it, and I don't
Yeah.
know. But they have Jolene.
Yep.
But there's a few others. I really love what we just said. Dan Binkowitz.
Yep. Love Big.
Dan is.
He's a real local.
He's a real
local.
local. We grew up together.
Okay.
And I don't talk about him enough, and he doesn't get enough credit.
Right.
But he has a formula. He has a certain formula to do, and he partners with the right people.
Yep.
He's really smart about his moves. But if I was allowed to partner with Dan, I
Right.
would be honored because he understands how to create a bar
Right.
that is approachable, that's accepted by everybody, that has great cocktails always.
But he's also just a good dude. I know that when during COVID, me, Brad Kilgore, Michael Schwartz, Michelle Bernstein, Zach the Baker, we started the Miami Employee Relief Fund, the Restaurant Relief Fund. And, I reached out to Dan, to find out what employees he let go, who he
Right.
wants to, and he was so helpful. And he went on social media and really kept sharing
Yeah.
all the stuff. He really cares.
He's a good guy.
He cares.
He's a very sweet person.
Yep.
I have a group of guys that we all grew up together, and girls. We all went to, junior high school and then high school
Right.
together, and so it's been great to watch him sort of build his career. I mean, he's got places all over now.
Right.
Nashville.
Yeah.
He's in New York now. He's a partner in a place called Schmuck.
Yep.
Which has quickly got a lot of hype, and it's a great cocktail bar in the East Village.
Yep.
He just announced he's doing a bar in Denver. So he's the man for sure.
Him being a local operator, what's your opinion on, because I know my opinion, I'm very vocal about it. Local concepts versus out-of-town concepts making it in Miami.
Again, look, I put myself as a patron.
Right.
Okay. would I go there?
Right.
Do I go back?
Right.
You know, so I don't care where the concept is from.
Right.
I really don't. I don't care where the operator is from.
Right.
At the end of the day, if it's a restaurant, is the food good?
Right.
Is there a value in the money I'm spending? Do I feel good inside this space?
Right.
So for me, those are the questions and the feelings that I look for when I go to a place.
Right. But I think to your point also, the duplicating a space, there's certain big name chef restaurants from Vegas and New York that opened up in Miami and they didn't even make it a year. Because I think a lot of the mentality is, well, why do I have to go here when I could just go to the one in Vegas when I'm in Vegas or the one in New York when I'm in New York?
Look, I mean, look at a place like Moxie's.
Right.
Okay. Moxie's is amazing.
Yes,
like,
it is.
It's incredible.
100%.
I mean, let's be honest.
100%.
Like it or don't like it.
100%.
It's packed 7 nights a week, 7 days a week.
Right.
The brand, they did it right.
Right.
It's not from here.
Right.
It's a Canadian brand. So I think it just depends on.
But then you have like a sexy fish that
well, look,
overspent and
for sure.
Every time I speak to people, and again, now things just become legends and stories. Oh, they spent 10 million, they spent 18 million, they spent 40 million. It's.
Well, they definitely spent a lot of money.
They definitely spent a lot of money, but
some
that
of those
number every
pieces
time I hear is
some of those octopuses.
Yes. And the
or
artwork.
octopi. What do you call that? I
James
don't even
Bond
know.
in the bathroom. And
Those are real pieces of art.
yeah.
I mean, that's Damien. I think
Damien Hirst, right?
Damien Hirst is I think the octopus. I mean, look, they definitely spent a lot of money.
Right.
I will say this. At first, I didn't love it.
Right.
It felt like Disney World for me.
Right.
But I have gone back.
Right.
And I've enjoyed myself there. Really. I mean, I typically will go and I'll hang by the bar and have a drink, maybe an appetizer. But I've gone back a few times, and they're very, very sweet. I like the hospitality there.
Right.
I will say that, put the frills and bells and whistles away. For me, like when I go there, and I don't ask for anything for free. I don't want any. I want to spend my money.
Right.
Like if you buy me something, thank you, I appreciate it. But that's not the hospitality I'm talking about.
Me too. I like supporting the local guys.
But the hospitality is where when they don't know me and,
Right.
and they're taking care of us
Right.
and I feel good.
To see how they treat you
That's
when
right.
they don't know who you
100%.
are. Right.
Again, and I mean this, it's not my favorite place in the world, but I would go there. I do go there, and I think over time it's gotten a little bit better.
Right.
Look, I think that there's groups that have come in here, and
I know there's obviously a couple of people that you don't want to mention because.
well, look, if you look at the Carbone,
Right.
Okay, I like Carbone.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, I've been a couple of times. It's a little pricey.
Yep.
But the meal feels like an experience.
The experience is always great.
But I don't like all their concepts.
Agree. 100%
Okay?
agree.
I don't even know those guys.
Right.
But obviously they know what they're doing. They have
I think
50
they came. I think. Listen, I've said this before. Those guys came in at such a perfect time. They came in prime COVID when nobody had jobs. They wound up taking the upland space. They reupholstered it. I think maybe they raised money like they were doing a new build out.
Right.
They use different investors for every city.
But I've been to Chateau Zizi's. It doesn't move me.
Right.
I'm not driven to go back there.
A lot of people. I'm surprised. A lot of people are it's.
I think it's a mix. I don't know if it's as successful as that they would like. I don't know their numbers.
Right.
But I've been there a few times where it was pretty quiet.
Right. I was hoping they would bring Teresi down here, but I heard that's never going to happen.
That place is amazing.
The place is amazing.
Yeah.
Great food and for me.
But I like their place in the Grove.
Vino's great. Vino's
no,
great.
I haven't been to that one. I'm at the deli.
Seidel's.
Yes.
Right.
I like it there.
Right. Yeah.
And I think there's a need for places like that where you can get salads and sandwiches and so I think there's a lot of good groups. That was kind of the point of the story. But I think there's a lot of good groups who are doing the right thing.
Right.
And
what
there's groups that aren't doing the right thing, and those will probably go away as time continues.
How many people have you seen wrap it up this year, or just really be more like this summer? I mean, listen, every summer we all know that Miami hurts. Every summer it's always bad in the summer. A couple months later, everybody is untouchable.
Well, those are the summertime blues.
Right.
I get them.
Right.
Where literally right after Memorial Weekend,
Yep.
you're into June and you're like, oh my God, we're back here again.
Do you find that it's been extending? Those blues have been extending a little bit?
Look, I think if you go back in time, it's sort of back to what Miami always was.
Right.
June through September, it's going to be dead.
Right.
You know, June and September were always the worst months of the year.
Right.
I'll tell you what happened that was interesting last night. I was at Rosa Sky, and there were a ton of Italians.
Right.
So for years, August, we'd always get hit with the Italians.
Right.
And it stopped for a while. And I saw it happen again last night, and I
Right.
was like, oh, good. You know, because all of a sudden it's like an influx of like new people,
Right.
Europeans coming. So I think that we're back to what Miami was pre-COVID.
Right.
We had our sort of fantasy couple summers that were still great, and I think that the reality has set in.
Right.
You know, I think it's tough for people. It's not easy. It's not easy for us. It's not easy. You know, there's a handful of restaurants that are always busy and that will be fine.
The top 1%ers, I call them.
That's it.
Right.
You know, and I think that you just got to be smart and figure out ways of getting people to come into the restaurant and sit in your seats and eat your food and drink your alcohol or non-alcoholic drinks.
Right. And again, like, you know, and I've said this before, that like you have been so interesting to watch on social media, and I love watching you reinvent yourself. For example, even like the collab you did with Bella Danger.
Yeah.
By the way, I love her. I'm in love with her. And the wife knows, but
She's amazing, actually.
She
For the record,
right.
I didn't know who she was
Right.
until she started coming to Giselle.
Right. Is it because like you picked up her whiskey or?
No. Before that,
Right.
she was as a customer.
Right.
I remember a few of the staff members getting excited she was there.
Right.
You know, she's got 9 million followers, whatever it is, on Instagram, and I didn't know who she was, and they were like, "Look, this is who it is," you know, and she's a retired porn star,
Right.
and so she was launching, and she had already been there 5 times, and I really didn't go up to her. I didn't
Right.
say hi to her.
Right.
I had no desire. I didn't. Not that I had no desire, but there was nothing to talk about.
Right.
She knew my staff. She'd come to the restaurant. She spends her own money. All good. And I get a call from a guy I know, and he says, I'm partnering with a Bella Danger to do a whiskey called Amabo. And I said, great. And he said, she loves Giselle. She wants to do the launch of the whiskey there. And I said, great. And that was it. They came over. We did a walkthrough. It was the first time that we said hello.
Right.
And we hit it off
Right.
right away. And I learned a lot about her quickly.
Right.
You
She's
know,
smart girl. I mean, she went back to school.
smart.
And,
She's
like,
amazing.
University of Miami. But I like that she's a 305 girl. Like,
she's a 305
right,
girl,
Right.
and she's about to finish her undergrad,
Right.
and then I don't know where she's going to law school, but she'll figure it out, and she'll be a lawyer, and she's amazing, and she's killing it, and she makes so much money,
Right.
and she doesn't do that porn
Right.
anymore, but you know, she's a spokesperson for
Right.
one production company. She's got the whiskey. I mean, she does very, very well.
Right.
So I have a lot of respect for her.
But you know, I liked how you did that collaboration. I like your voice on social media. I like that you're yourself. I like that you're no bullshit. You're a straight up dude, and like what you say you mean, and you're not faking it for the cameras. You're not selling anything. You're kind of just, you know.
So because of these podcasts,
Right.
someone asked me to do one.
Right.
A woman that I didn't even really know.
Right.
And I was like, all right, sure. I don't even know why I said yes, because I had already turned down a few and I had no desire.
Right.
And my social media really was initially my travels.
Right.
And I wanted to document it. And, you know, Facebook, I didn't really ever care about so much. I was on there, but
Right.
it didn't mean anything to me. And then I did Kiko.
Right.
And all day.
Miami, right.
Yeah. And I was like, you know, maybe I should rethink the social media and what it looks like and what it means and how do I. So there was a girl, a woman, her name's Alicia, and she was launching her own business, and it was basically social media
Right.
sort of marketing and
Right.
you know, branding, whatever you call it, you know. And I went to her and I said, you know, I've been thinking about my social media, and like, is there anything I could do different that would make it? She's like, well, so we dove deep into it. I mean, literally, she asked me like 100 questions. I
Right.
had to fill out. Literally, it was like 10 pages long, and you know, for me, the important stuff is I wanted to be authentic to who
Right.
I am.
Right.
I don't, you know, I think that people, especially more and more now.
Yep.
I think that people have the ability to sort of see and know what's real and what's not.
But how important is that for your brand, being authentic and?
Well, all I have is that.
Right.
You know, I don't know if that makes any sense,
Well,
but
well, look, you know what? And again, I so appreciate this. You know, sometimes you touch down on mental health. You know, I have really bad ADD, and you know, spent years trying to like maneuver and like, you know, 100 million ideas popping at the same time, but can't concentrate on one. I believe you have ADHD. Like, I don't know if that.
I've never
was
actually
more of
gone
like
to the doctor and been diagnosed.
Right.
That's the real truth.
Right.
I diagnosed myself.
You're self-diagnosed.
You know,
right.
because I know the way my brain
Right.
works. You know, for me, it was how do I sort of stand out
Right.
within the community,
Right.
you know, in my business, in our world, and sort of get a message across that was fun,
Right.
that felt like me. You know, I'm not like such a serious guy. I didn't go to college. I look at myself as like an artist, really.
Right.
I've said this before, like I view myself as an artist.
Right.
You know, what makes me the most happy is creating. And I love people.
Right.
I love all kinds of people. You know, I'm probably too nice. I'm probably too, I don't know, approachable. I'm probably too sort of available.
Right.
That's the real truth. I get taken advantage of a little bit too much.
Right.
And as time has continued, I'm making a conscious effort to start separating myself a little bit
Right.
because I'm also getting busier.
Right.
But I think for the social media, you know, some of the parts that I wanted to, with Alicia's help,
Right.
you know, was to, one, be able to entertain people, two, sort of have a message that was authentic to me, also business, also real, where I'm from,
Right.
who you know, what my life is like. And I think we're getting there. I think we've done a good job. She's really smart. It's fun. I think that, you know, I don't look at it as like a job,
Right.
you know.
You love what you do. Every morning you wake up, it's not a job.
Yeah, no, I love what I do.
Right.
I was out last night until 2:30 in the morning, you know,
God
and
bless you.
you know,
God bless you. I don't know how you do it
I
right
feel
now, 50,
young,
man. It's
yeah, I feel young. I love watching. Sometimes I forget my age
Right.
and what I look like.
Right.
I think I was reminded. I posted somebody tagged me in a post from yesterday. It was an Ocean Drive, like shot on site, you know, and there's a picture of me. It was probably 20 years ago,
Right.
maybe a little bit before, and all my hair was black.
Right.
And I looked at that picture and I was like, all right, I don't look like that anymore, you know.
Little just for men, you'd be fine, bro.
And
It's-
I don't even care, but I had to like. So sometimes I find myself in this moment. Like last night, actually, I'm sitting with a buddy of mine, and it was his table, and I went there by myself to Rosa Sky, and I sat with him, and I'm looking around and I'm watching everything, and I'm
Right.
like, you know, I'm the oldest one there now. Where for years it was always the opposite.
Right.
I was always the young guy.
Right.
But you know, how do I sort of break into that
Right.
circle? How do I feel? How do I make people feel like I can be their friend too, but yet I'm 20 years older than them, or 25 years older
But
than
also
them?
you owning these
or
brands,
30.
how, like, you know, I think one of the questions, I mean, I would ask myself if I was in your situation is, how do I stay relevant?
Well, that's what we're talking about,
Right.
really. It's like, how do I stay relevant?
Right.
How do I do something that's going to make the young audience sort of respect me or feel connected to me?
Right.
You know, and I think that's where the going out part is.
Right.
You know,
You stay with the people.
I stay with the people. It's like, look, you know, I for years I always went to music festivals.
Right.
And I'm talking for years, like way back. You know, I'd go to all kinds of music festivals, and now I go to music festivals, or I go out at night, and part of it is like sort of, yeah, it's to have a good time,
Right.
but it's also to sort of like see, what are the young people wearing? You know, somebody who's 25 years older than me,
Right.
you know, what's he wearing? What is she wearing? What are they into now? You know, they're talking about people are drinking less. The young generation's drinking less. So what does that mean for us?
Right.
What do we do? How do we stay alive then now?
Well, you know, we just did a talking head on the whole licensing music and how those costs are going up. And are you dealing with some of that right now?
We deal with it through our corporate office.
Right.
So not per unit really,
Right.
but yeah. I mean, but that used to come up back in the day too. We'd get calls when I had Rumi. I can remember getting an email, getting a mailed letter from like ASCAP and
Right.
BMI and asking for money. We're like, money for what? Publishing rights to play our music in your club. You know, so those things always happened.
Right.
But there's no difference there. That's the same, yeah.
Right. Okay, last question. We're going to be doing this with every guest. Top 5, but it won't be the same question for everybody. You know, question we have for you. Your top 5 places, nightclubs that you've gone out to. And we're talking since 18, 19-year-old. The top 5 parties. The top 5 parties, like weekly parties.
Are we talking about Miami?
We are talking
Well,
about...
if you're talking about weekly parties, I'm assuming you're talking about Miami.
Talking about Miami.
Okay.
Your top 5.
So weekly parties.
Right.
Got
Again,
it.
you could have maybe some of the ones that you've done, maybe the ones that like
Sure, of course.
reinvented Miami or Miami Beach.
I'll tell you.
What are your top 5?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, I think that you have to look at one that we've already mentioned, which was the Fat Black Pussycat.
Absolutely, hands down.
Fat Black Pussycat, the original, and even what it morphed into, but the original Fat Black Pussycat was so cool. You truly did need a password to get in. It was at what was called Mario's,
Yep.
which would later be turned into Chris and Ingrid opened a nightclub there.
Yep.
But it was at Mario's, and it was started by a few guys who, both of them were super eccentric, really interesting guys. One was John Hood.
Yep.
I don't know where he is. He's still alive.
He was
I'm pretty
mentioned
sure.
with Chris and Ingrid.
Chris and
when we had
Ingrid,
them
I'm
on, yeah.
sure. John was this guy who was a writer.
Right.
He always wore a suit.
Right.
I mean, he was such a character. He was really amazing.
Yes.
Number 2 was a party that Mark Leventhal, Bill, and Conrad did called Hercules. It was at Chaos, and it was on Sunday.
Right.
And the music was just like on point.
Right.
Number 3 was a party that I did
me.
with some of those guys called the Magic Garden.
Yep.
And the Magic Garden was at the Albion Hotel.
Yep.
And every Friday night we would have something really interesting and unique going on. And we took over the entire lobby, the pool area, the outdoor patio.
Right.
We'd have 500, 1,500 people a night.
Yep.
So that was number 3. My 4th is Backdoor Bambi.
Okay.
It was one of these parties. It was at Crowbar.
Monday nights, right?
At Monday nights,
Right.
and anything went. Like literally, it was like S&M. It was wild. It was super fun.
It was what we
Gay,
talked about. It was
straight.
just like, there was all one.
It was
right?
all one.
Right.
Yeah. So number 5 for me was the Church,
Right.
which happened Sunday nights at Groove Jet, and it was like
What kind of
progressive,
music was it?
progressive.
Yep.
You know, 9 Inch Nails.
Love that.
I mean, it was amazing.
Ahead of its time?
It was ahead of it. No, it was right on time. It was,
was
perfect.
perfect, right?
Yeah. Those are my 5 top parties for sure.
I love it.
Yeah.
Alan, dude, this was real pleasure.
Thank you
real
for having
eye-opening,
me.
man. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank
It
you.
really was.
Now find
super
me a
pleasure.
second generation space.
I got you covered, man.
A
Now we're
good
gonna
space.
talk.
This is your job.
Now we're gonna talk.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming on, brother.
Of course. Thank
Take
you.
care, man.
Thank you. Thank you.